Now is Israel's ambassador to the United Kingdom, Zippy Hotovely. Welcome to you. Boris Johnson, Prime Minister, as you know, has appealed for restraint on both sides. What's Israel's response to that request?
Well, first of all, let's describe the situation on the ground. Israel is under attack, under heavy fire from Hamas, a terror organization that is targeting civilians. I just spoke to my parents. My mother, over 60 years old woman, had to go into a shelter. She lives in the center of Israel, a few minutes away from Tel Aviv. The whole country is under fire.
Okay, well,
Children are not going to school.
We appreciate that.
You need to understand where Israel is standing at the moment.
Well, I want to talk about that, but I do just want to ask, first of all, about what the Prime Minister and indeed others in the international community have said. Is this a time for Israel to show restraint?
No, it's a time to Israel to protect its citizens. And we try to show restraint and to de-escalate the situation. Few days, we did it with all measures possibly a sovereign country can do. But look at this. Synagogues were under fire yesterday in the heart of Israel. You cannot ignore the facts.
I'm not ignoring any facts, and I want to talk to you about the
Any sovereign country...
Do you think
any sovereign country would have defended citizens?
As the United Nations says, moving towards all-out war?
United Nations, its duty to say that Hamas is committing a double war crimes. Right. One war crime is they're shooting from civilian areas, and the other one they're shooting to civilians. Yeah. So they're committing double war crimes.
As you well know, the United Nations has repeatedly said that the settlements are illegal in international law and should cease, and those are continuing.
But they need to condemn terror organization, which is recognized by Britain and by the United States, that is now shooting into civilian population.
All I'm saying is a bit rich to say
people.
The United Nations should do something when Israel is ignoring what the United Nations has said in the context of settlements.
Can I ask you something? What would you do if Britain was under a fire? What would you do if London was under fire and rockets were thrown on your house? What would you do? Do you think Britain would have sit in silent, not protecting its citizens? Do you expect any sovereign country not to protect its citizens?
Of course you can protect citizens. The question is the retaliation and the attacking of civilians in Gaza and elsewhere, which, as we know, once again is leading to disproportionate suffering on the Palestinian side.
Well, the big disproportional is the fact that a whole country, which is Israel, is shattered now, and kids cannot go to school and have daily routine because kids are under attack and schools are under attack.
Kids in Gaza can't go to school and they're being killed.
So tell their leadership to stop incite.
Well, no, but it's Israel who's
it's the Hamas who's sending the rockets. It's Hamas who's sending the rockets.
It's Israel which is countering with the Air Force, with the strikes, which you acknowledge are in civilian areas because you blame Hamas for using civilians as shields. But it is, I've come back to this, it is disproportionate that there are more people suffering on the Palestinian
side. Let me give you,
side.
I'm a jurist in my background, so let me give you the international perspective of that by international law. Israel is respecting the international law. According to international law, whenever you're under a war with a terror organization, you can shoot to the targets in order to destroy the facilities of this terror organization. This is what Israel has been doing for the last 2 days in order to protect our citizens.
Even if it results in significant civilian casualties.
We're doing everything. We are doing everything in our power not to harm children.
But if you stop the attacks,
but we need to protect the Israeli children as well. You need to understand.
Yeah, but if you stop the attacks, you wouldn't be killing Palestinian children.
So you expect us just to have fire on our cities, on our children, and do nothing? Do you expect that from a sovereign nation, not to protect its citizens? This is what you're basically saying.
I say people who've been victims of terror attacks, countries who've been victims of terror attacks, do not always respond in the way that Israel's responding.
Well, I can tell you,
and it's legitimate.
I've seen many countries that were under terror attacks. They were always protecting their citizens. Definitely a democracy like Israel who protects human rights. And one of the things we're obligated to do is to make sure that Israelis won't be under fire.
You say you're acting defensively, but there are those who say that this is a situation that was provoked by the Israeli authorities, by police going into the Al-Aqsa Mosque, by the use of stun grenades, by stopping the free movement in Jerusalem.
I'm very happy you're mentioning that because I want to answer this question.
Yeah. Do you accept that the police overreacted?
I want to answer what's happening on the ground and what's the reason we've seen the picture we've seen. For many years, Ramadan month, this holy time of the year, thousands of Muslims were praying and worshipping on Temple Mount. Nothing happened, never in the past for the last many years that Israel has freedom of worship to all religions. What happened this year? So the reason that we've seen this act of violence from Hamas is because of internal political debate between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority have made a decision to cancel. Wait a second. I'm not sure everyone is aware of the fact. What's the trigger?
You said you wanted to talk about what happened in Jerusalem.
I'm answering you. What's the political aim behind the violence?
I'm asking you, on behalf of the Israeli government, would you accept that there was overreaction and indeed brutality by the Israeli
Absolutely
police?
Not. Absolutely not. And I can tell you why. Because what is out of proportion is the incitement of Hamas leadership at the moment that is trying to take the leadership of the Palestinian people, and instead of seeing their leadership or the Palestinian Authority leadership calling to people to calm down and to stop violence, we see the opposite. We see them inciting people in Israel,
but again,
the citizens of Israel, against Jews.
Hang on.
We see them calling for holy and religious war.
I understand.
This is what's happening on the ground. Hamas is using this political crisis in the Palestinian Authority in order to harm Israelis and civilians.
But I'm asking you about Israel. Is Mr. Netanyahu exploiting this political crisis? As we know, he's only the acting prime minister because of inconclusive elections. He's worried about losing office because of possible prosecutions he might face. And that whipping up a security situation or allowing a very dangerous security situation to take place may be simply a cynical way of saving himself.
All political leaders in Israel today want Israel to respond to Hamas aggression and to Hamas attacks on Israeli civilians, because this is what every country would have done.
Not in the way that is going on.
No, in a way. Actually, some people say we're being too gentle. Some people say we're being too gentle. As long as our cities are still under fire, we're being probably too gentle, because we need to stop those rockets being fired on our cities and our civilians and our children.
Right.
And let me share with you a personal story. I'm a mother for young children. And I remember myself sitting in the middle of Israel. I live in Rehovot. It's where the Weizmann Institute is. It's a very famous city. I remember myself taking my baby daughter to a shelter because Hamas was shooting rockets in the middle, in the heart of Israel.
Very well, Palestinian families with children remember being forcibly evicted. They know that the law, as it's currently being applied to the claiming of property in East Jerusalem, is biased against the Palestinians. Basically, they have no rights, and Jewish people do.
You cannot buy this excuse. You're too serious for that. You know that this has been a legal case. It's been going on for years. So it cannot be the trigger this year, isn't it? Because this is a legal case that Israel has asked the court not to actually give a verdict now, because the tension is so big. But I can tell you, this is a legal decision. It's been going on for years. So it cannot be the trigger. The real trigger is the political debate between the Palestinian Authority and Hamas.
But it also stands, doesn't it, that the two-state solution cannot be possible so long as the settlement program continues and the claiming of East Jerusalem, can it?
Look at Gaza. Hamas is shooting from Gaza. No settlements in Gaza, as you know, because Israel withdrew in 2005. What was the result? More radicals took over, and they're shooting rockets on the heart of Israel. They're shooting rockets on Tel Aviv. Do you think Tel Aviv is a settlement?
What I'm saying is there are radicals on both
sides,
aren't there? There's provocative behaviour by the Israeli police, arguably supported by the Netanyahu regime. And we've seen the demonstrators on the streets saying, you know, kill the Jews, kill the Arabs.
Actually, it's the Arabs calling kill the Jews. You weren't saying something by mistake.
And also Israeli Jews saying kill the Arabs, get the Arabs out.
I can tell you that whoever says kill someone, this is the role of the police to take them into prison, because this is illegal. But if you're coming back to the provocations...
How many Jewish people have been arrested?
All I can tell you that we have equal law. We have equal law for everyone, and everyone who's doing a violent protest is being in jail.
Right.
But I can tell you that at the moment, the provocators are the leaders of Hamas, a cruel terror organization that is trying to kill my children, my brothers who are sitting in shelters at the moment.
So this confrontation just goes on, right?
No, it can stop. The minute Hamas stops shooting rockets on our cities, Israel wants to live in peace. As you know, we've been living in coexistence for years. Let me tell you another personal story. I grew up in Lod, this city that we saw those marches yesterday, those synagogues going on fire. For many years, Jews and Arabs lived completely in peace. What happened? It's Hamas inciting those people, where the citizens of Israel, instead of living in coexistence to the opposite, to act in violence, to commit crimes, to put synagogues in fire. This is vandalism against holy sites. Those are things no sovereign country can accept.
It has to be said, as a diplomat, you're not really offering much diplomacy, are you?
I'm offering justice. I'm offering the justice of my country. What I'm offering at the moment is make